I'm pretty confident this reaction is done, so I am going to actually stir it for just a couple more minutes, 10 minutes total, and then we'll call it done and add the hydrochloric acid. And we're going to be adding 2 milliliters of that. I'm trying to get all the sodium hydroxide that's trapped within the product to react. So we have an acidic solution when we filter. I'm guessing that this compound will be white when it's clean, even though it looks like it's kind of a pale pinkish at the moment. One more minute. That's good enough. That's it. Beaker there so it doesn't fall over. I'm just going to pipette 2 milliliters of this into the graduated cylinder. A little over, but not much. That to the flask, kind of run it down the spatula and around the walls. We'd be washing with 2 milliliters of DI water after I do the filtration, so I'll have that at the ready. So as I stir this around, the goal is to get the solid off the walls of the flask and suspend it nicely in the solution. Pull any traces of solid off. See that it's kind of looking more yellow than anything else at this point. Just kind of a pale, creamy color. So I want to get good mixing here. All that sodium hydroxide that's in there trapped needs to react. So we make sure that we have an acidic solution. We don't have unreacted sodium hydroxide that's going to get trapped in the solid. You know, it's coming off the walls pretty well. Got a nice suspension. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to grab a piece of pH paper to test the pH of that solution. put my DI water into the graduator cylinder as well, so I have that ready for the wash. Doesn't have to be exactly 2, around about 2. Good enough. I always have my pipette in the Erlenmeyer, and then I sit it in front of what I've just pipetted it with, or pipetted with it, so that I know. I'm going to set up a filtration apparatus. You're going to need a 25 milliliter filter flask, a Hirsch funnel with a number 2 rubber filter adapter, and a piece of filter paper, tweezers to grab that. Clamp this guy in place. And our tubing. And I'm doing all this while that's sitting there, reacting a little bit more with the sodium hydroxide. There's filter paper there. Oops, that's the wrong drawer for that. It goes in the filter box. So we can pull a little bit of, yeah, that's two pieces of filter paper. Save the other one for after the recrystallization. So I think it's 2 pieces of filter paper. Maybe not. Go. If it is 2 pieces, it'll just filter very slowly. So I'm going to wet that with a little bit of DI water. Create a tight seal. Since it's an aqueous solution that I'm going to be filtering. And we confirm that that is very acidic. Bright red. And we're just going to filter this. Swirl it up and dump it fairly quickly. Try to get all that solid out of there. And then we're going to rinse that with the 2 milliliters of DI water. Just run down the side. Try to get the rest of the solid out of the flask. And this will also wash the acid out of the solid. So do that once, do that again. Leaving a little solid behind, but not too much. So we've got an almost white, maybe kind of pale yellow, but almost white powdery solid from this reaction. Weighing paper and page paper are trash. And this micro spatula had sodium hydroxide on it. So I'm going to rinse that. Set it aside. Go grab a little bit more ice. Just another handful. For our recrystallization, we're going to use 95% ethanol. So I'm going to let air go through there to dry that off a little bit. And then we'll get a mass of that solid for crude yield. And meanwhile, I'm going to make up some 95% ethanol. So just add a little bit of water. I don't know how much we'll need, but probably no more than 20 milliliters. So we'll measure out 19 milliliters of ethanol and just add 1 milliliter of water. I mean, it's not absolutely critical that this be exactly 95%. We might as well get close. Probably don't need that anymore. So we'll then pour this into our 100 ml beaker. Set that in the back of the hood to dry. And we'll start heating that. Ethanol boils at 78. I'm going to stir this at about 300, just a gentle stirring, and turn this up to just over 100, which will probably get me to the temperature I need to be there with my 95% ethanol. This beaker was clean. Put that one away. So that's probably been drying for long enough. It's not going to be completely dry, but pretty good. We'll break the vacuum. Leave the tubing out because we'll need it again. And this that was holding that pipette will be the flask that we do our recrystallization in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear this flask, and then I'm going to use I think I'll do that in the hood. I'm going to use a micro spatula to just weigh the stuff directly into the flask, and then we'll get a crude yield by difference. So the flask is 24.321 grams, 25 milliliter Erlenmeyer. Get a clean micro spatula. Scrape that powder out. A nice solid. I could use a piece of filter paper as a funnel here, but I think rather than have it come into contact with one more surface, I trust myself to get that in there without spilling a little bit. If I spill a little bit, who cares? Because we've got a lot. I'm going to try to leave that filter paper behind if I can, so I don't have to pluck it out of there with tweezers later. We'll see if we can be gentle and not disturb the paper. The paper has come loose now. But I've got most of the solid off. And I'm just going to grab that paper with the tweezers. Try to scrape the solid off the paper as much as I can. Just get the last bit that's in the funnel. We'll use a clean funnel for the transfer of the pure solid, but I'm going to use the same little micro spatula. I'll just wipe it clean so that it's ready when I need it next time. Let's go weigh this, see how much solid we have for our crude yield. We're now looking at 24.746 grams. So we're going to recrystallize that. We're going to add a boiling stone so that it doesn't bump.